Gleason. I'm the LCLS UEC chair, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this overview specifically for Run 18. We're very grateful to have the LCLS facility staff here to give a variety of updates. We'll first hear from Mike Dunn, an update on LCLS and the Run 18 proposal call. And then we'll hear from Bob Scholine about the science campaign call that went out, and we've received some feedback on that. And so we're excited to hear about that new mode of access. And then we'll go through and hear individually about the accelerator update, soft and hard X-ray instruments, MEC, and laser update. So I want to encourage the community, those of you who are listening in, please ask questions in real time. We will be able to answer them in the talks. There will also be a Q&A session right after. Feel free, we are fielding questions. We have a number of us who will be able to real time interact with you, so please do not be shy. Ask questions. And now the options for asking those questions are through the chat. Just type it in through the Q&A box. Please just type it in. With that, I think we'll have Mike Dunn start us off. So Director Mike Dunn, thank you.
Thanks, Ariana. Okay, let's try and get the slide up. So I must say it's a good feeling to be back in the room advertising an upcoming run. It's been way too long. From my perspective, since we last did this, thank you all for remembering us, coming back to LCLS and joining us for this overview of Run 18. You may have to hit the button. So. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the first things first, why has it been so long? So we're in the middle, as I'm sure most of you know, of a series of major upgrades to the facility. The one that's underway at the moment is the LCLS 2 upgrade that takes out the first 700-800 meters or so of our LINAC and replaces it with a superconducting RF system that will take us from 120 pulses a second to roughly 1 million pulses per second. In order to allow some of the infrastructure to be installed, we've been down for about a year. So all of calendar year 2019 and a little bit before and afterwards to install new undulator systems that Tim Maxwell will describe, as well as some of the other infrastructure that's needed. This will be our only major downtime for the next few years. There will be in the middle of the decade, some downtime for LCLS2 high energy, HE. That will be linked, we hope, to the installation of a petawatt laser system and high energy laser system at MEC. So we minimize future downtime. So hopefully we won't have to go through this level of pain and in absence of beam, for a long time. All right, so with that said, let me give you the detail of the timeline on the next slide. So here's an overview of the past couple of years and the next couple of years. You can see on the top row, we finished Run 17 at the end of calendar year 2018. And we've spent, just about a year, slightly more in shutdown mode. And we come back up online at the beginning of calendar year 2020, and then run for an extended period of time from that point onwards. Initially with the existing copper LINAC into our 2 new undulators, more details on that in a moment, and then subsequently with the LCLS2 superconducting RF system. You can see on that second row, we're in the mode of installation and commissioning. Some of that necessitated the shutdown, some of it can be done in parallel through 2020. Current expectation is that LCLS2 accelerator will turn on through the course of 2021. The exact details of which month, we'll come back to you later on. Okay, so to the details of Run 18, go back, Paul. To the details of Run 18, we start up the beam in January, February time. We'll put the beam into the instrument areas from March. That probably means external users from late March, early April, sometime around there. And we'll run all the way through to December. This is almost twice the length of our usual runs, and this is partly to allow our soft X-ray instruments to come online, be commissioned, and be offered to you and the user community towards the middle and the end of the run, and partly because, of course, it's been so long since we had a run. I'm sure there's a lot of great proposals out there waiting to be fielded, so we wanted to get the maximum number online. So.
When will the 25 copper Linac be available?
Yeah, great question. So Tim will go into details of this. So one of the enhancements that we get from installing the new hard X-ray undulator is doubling the photon energy reach from what was roughly 12 or 13 kilovolts to 25 kilovolts. That should be available from the summer onwards. Probably not on day one. The installation of the undulators is phased. So we anticipate sometime in the summer. So certainly during this run, as far as we anticipate. So we encourage and accept proposals that will take us, well beyond the old 12, 13 kilovolt limit. And, the anticipation is we'll go up to 25 kilovolts or so. More details later on. Thank you for that question. So those hard X-ray instruments that will reach out all that way, and MEC also will restart experiments in March. External users probably very soon after that, as I say, March or April. The soft X-ray instruments, I'll say more on the next slide, will come online in a phased fashion. So we'll begin commissioning of the first interaction point in what's now called the TMO area, the old Hutch 1 AMO area. Beam starts in April. We'll go through a month or so of commissioning, and then a month or so of what we're calling early science, which will be a collaborative by invitation period where we ramp up the performance of the instrument, and then on to full PRP access, later in this summer, then all the way through to December. The second end station that comes online is a liquid jet, so-called ChemRIX, chemical science using resonant inelastic X-ray scattering techniques and in X-ray absorption techniques. Beam will start there in June. Again, we'll go through a commissioning period, an early science period. And so in the late summer, early fall, we'll anticipate bringing that online to users through the PRP process. Tim will go over the details of the beam performance in a couple of talks. Okay. So just a bit more detail on the soft X-ray side, because this is the newest area. Again, that same calendar timeline on the bottom right, and you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 end stations that come online over the next 2-year period. The first one, that first interaction point, that has the code name of Namaste, will be the centerpiece of our TMO instrument for Run 18. Mike Minetti will give you details of that. And then the monochromatic beam now goes upstairs to 2 instruments, ultimately, first to this liquid jet ChemRIX station that will be part of the Run 18 call. Again, Mike will provide details of that. And subsequently, a high-resolution QRIX, a momentum-resolving RIX system, in the latter part of 2021. So that will be in a subsequent call. And then just beyond this timeline, we have our dual beam, so-called tender X-ray instruments that will come online beyond 2021. So what we have is about 1 year where these soft X-ray instruments can make use of our existing copper Linac at 120 hertz with this new variable gap soft X-ray undulator. Let us commission those systems, shake them down, and also perform some hopefully great science using the 120 hertz beam prior to the LCLS 2 megahertz beam coming online, sometime in 2021. So we're looking for experiments that can make good use of that low rep rate, our existing rep rate, but also with a view to how do we stage experiments to make use of the high rate beam, as we come online subsequently. Okay. So then I'll just say one word on scientific campaigns and hand over to Bob for the details. This is something new for us. It's something we're trialing, and we very much welcome and encourage feedback on all aspects of the science campaigns, how we're putting them together, selection of topical areas, the procedural process of how we're choosing and selecting them. Bob will provide details of that. The fundamental reasoning of why we're doing this is to reflect on the fact that up until this point, LCLS experiments have been one-off, single applications to single calls. A given experiment would last between 12 hours and 60 hours typically. But now with LCLS 2, we'll have 2 undulators. We'll roughly double the number of the amount of beam time, maybe more than double the number of experiments. And of course, there are other systems coming online that have come online around the world. So the capacity, significantly more than has been the case over these past few years. So we feel, in discussions with DOE, with our Science Advisory Committee, with Ariana and her UEC, now is the time to look at research programs that would really significantly benefit from coupled multiple beam times, where there's a program of work that lasts maybe 2, 3, 4 years, that has a series of coordinated beam times, and a really robust, comprehensive research team that covers the modeling, the theory, synthesis of sample, and the experimental and analysis members of the team. There will be two aspects to the science campaigns in 118. One that you've all seen, this open call for use of hard X-rays, against ideally stretching use beyond 12 kilovolts up to the highest energies we can offer in the broad area of structural dynamics of complex matter. I'm pleased to say we got many proposals at the letter of interest phase, and we're now in the process of down selecting and going through full proposals and peer review of those. Alongside that, as I'm sure you're all aware, I'm allowed a 10% director's discretionary time of LCLS beam time, and I'll make use of some part of that in 118 to capitalize on the unique capability of LCLS to offer sub-femtosecond, maybe a few hundred attosecond pulses using this X-leap system that Tim will describe. And so I've commissioned a trial campaign in the area of attosecond science. This is being led by James Cryan, Peter Walter, Argo Marinelli in Mike Manitti's area, and will involve many members in the attosecond community. If you want to know more about that, talk to me, talk to Mike Manitti, talk to James Cryan, talk to Argo Marinelli, or talk to Peter Walter, any of those folks. So we want to discuss more about this, of course, at the users meeting in September. There'll be some dedicated time to go over this, and I'll hand over to Bob to provide more details now about what these campaigns are about, unless there are any immediate questions. Ari?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to just pause here
Sure.
for a second and see if we have any questions typed in. Folks, feel free.
Okay, let's cycle around the
question.
change the slides and we can talk.
So there was discussion about remodel of the FAR experimental hall. When will this remodeling occur?
Right, so the FAR experimental hall is coupled to the LCLS2 HE, high energy extension. In that LCLS2, as we come online in the next year or so, will provide high rate beam from the carbon K edge, 250 EV or so, up to about 5 kilovolts. So it doesn't impact the FAR experimental hall much. So HE will extend that high rate beam up to somewhere between 12 and 20 kilovolts, depending how it works out. And so at that point, we can configure the FAR experimental hall. So this will be in the middle of the decade, 2023 to 2026, somewhere in that period. And will be coupled also to this upgrade of MEC that's underway now, and going through its review and approval phases. So at this stage, for Run 18 and Run 19 and Run 20, the FAR experimental hall will look at a macroscopic level, as it always has, and Sebastian will go through some of the detailed changes and upgrades, particularly on the detector side, that have been underway over the past few months in readiness for Run 18.
Okay, thank you. And with that, let's go ahead and hand it over to Bob Scholine for science campaigns. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we wanted to provide a bit more explanation about the science campaigns that Mike has already mentioned. This is a new access mechanism, and this is the inaugural run of this. So of course we welcome people's feedback, and we're encouraged by the response so far. While this is a new access mechanism to LCLS, people should think of this as really an expansion of the PRP process, currently limited to 10% of the available beam time. And as Mike already mentioned, the primary motivation of this is to target high-impact science areas that exploit LCLS capabilities, and in particular to support comprehensive research efforts requiring multiple beam times. Now, I know that people tend to think of this as assembling, their colleagues with like-minded and similar expertise and interests. We'd like this to be more than that. We expect this to be really comprehensive efforts, as Mike mentioned, ideally incorporating synthesis, experiment, and theory, for example, potentially incorporating experiments, complementary experiments, but then the intent is that they be comprehensive, not just an assembly of like-minded LCLS users.
Can I ask, there's a question that's come up. Apparently, you're told that biology applications are not considered for science campaigns. Even if it's clearly condensed complex matter, how can we address that?
So that's specific to the current campaign, and maybe we'll get to that. It is not excluded in general. It's just that the current campaign has a particular focus, and so we'll get to that maybe in the last slide.
Okay.
And maybe if I could just add in that, as part of the users meeting in September, we really want to encourage a debate as to, which areas should be targeted in the future. There was this very focused call in, complex matter dynamics, focusing on non-biological samples for this run. We envision, probably 4 or 5 concurrent campaigns in the steady state. So let us know where you think there will be great advantage, where we should target. It's a discussion we're having with our SAC. And Bob will maybe cover that also later on as well.
Right. So hold those thoughts just for a moment.
Thank you.
So as I said, this is really sort of an expansion of the PRP access. So it's open and competitive based on peer review, but we expect that the scientific scope and impact of campaigns, or at least successful campaigns, will be well above a standard PRP proposal. So there needs to be a very clear justification for a campaign, as opposed to just a string of experiments that could easily be pursued independently. And there's an important requirement that there be close partnership with LCLS and a need for LCLS capabilities. Similarly, the review is along the lines of the current PRP review, but it's augmented to include high-level subject matter experts as necessary. And we will rely on LCLS SAC to provide input or oversight on the overall portfolio. So while they're not reviewing individual proposals, they will give us important advice and feedback on the overall balance. And of course, part of this is motivated by the fact that we've been limited so far to one-off experiments, while at the same time, there's much more international competition and an expansion in capacity for XFEL science. So this is sort of an opportune time to expand access mechanisms in this way. So on the next slide, we just explained a little bit of the nuts and bolts of science campaigns. In the general scenario is that these would be initiated by a targeted call for proposals from LCLS in specific science areas. And the current campaign request for proposals is an example of just such a call. And in some cases, these may be coordinated with BES programs, depending on the scenario. One important consideration is that a pre-proposal and discussions with LCLS is required before the invitation for a full proposal. So there is an important pre-screening process for all of these. I mentioned already that these are expected to be more extensive proposals, and there's a specific template that hopefully people that are interested have had a chance to look at. These are posted now on the LCLS website in several places. More extensive review, as I mentioned on the previous slide, and oversight by the SAC. And of course, as with all LCLS beam time, the final decisions for allocation of beam time is by the LCLS director. Important for these campaigns, as Mike mentioned, they may extend over multiple runs and even multiple years. There is expected to be feedback to LCLS and to the PRP following each beam time. So it's not that you get guaranteed 2 years of access. These are expected to be adjusted along the way as necessary.
Can we ask, so how many letters of interest did you receive? And then how many will be requested for full proposals?
Yeah, so we got, I think, 20 LOIs, and I think of those 13, 13 will go to the full proposal stage, and we anticipate maybe 2 will be fielded. So roughly 10%, overall success rate, which is roughly half the success rate for normal, regular proposals, which feels about right for this sort of major step up in, scope and scale of a campaign compared to a regular proposal. So I was very pleased with that, actually. I think it's about the level I would have expected, and, I'd very much seek feedback and thoughts as to how other people view this.
Actually, I have a question. Of those 2 then that go through, what amount of beam time per run are you envisioning those will receive?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, this is part of the feedback we'll get from the PRP and our SAC, but on average, it's probably, 1 experiment per run, over the course of, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 runs, something like that. So, maybe with run 18 being long, there'll be an exception. Maybe 1 or 2, maybe one will have two individual experiments in Run 18 because it's so long.
Yes.
So, but we'll see.
So there's an explicit component of the proposal for people to sort of map out the requested beam times. And so we expect that people will make sort of a clear case. If they think they can make effective use of 2 short beam times in a given run, they should sort of spell that out. On the other hand, if they are requesting more than 1 run in a beam time, they've got to be able to explain that, yes, they can actually get data from 1 run and digest it and accordingly plan the second beam time. So we're really expecting that people will lay out a relatively clear plan.
Okay.
And then, of course, subject to all the other constraints that Mike mentioned.
Okay.
2 important points is that on the bottom of that slide, sorry, Paul. So investigators on a science campaign won't be allowed to submit PRP proposals in the same area. So this is really no different than the current restrictions where people should not be submitting more than 1 PRP proposal that are identical or too similar. All right, that's a little bit subject to interpretation, but it's the same sort of restrictions that we have today. And of course, denied campaign proposals will automatically be considered for a PRP beam time. So any effort toward a campaign proposal is not wasted effort because it will immediately fold into the normal PRP process for consideration of a single beam time in the upcoming run.
Okay, so folks are a little confused. They have to resubmit. You're saying, no, you don't have to resubmit it. If it's rejected for science campaign, it automatically goes. Okay.
For the full proposal. If your letter of interest was denied, yeah, you still got to prepare a proposal.
Understood. Thank you.
Two-page letter of interest does not constitute a proposal.
Okay, thank you.
So the criteria are outlined here. Some of this is repeating what I've mentioned already, and you can find this on the website, but there's got to be a clear, compelling need for LCLS capabilities and a clear justification for a campaign. And you can see on the next slide, I'll refer to you where you can find these criteria on the website. So I'm encouraging people to take a look at the LCLS updated policies for further details. In particular, if you look at proposal preparation guidelines, you'll see explicit directions for preparing scientific campaign proposals. Similarly, if you look at updated LCLS policies, you'll see updated policies on the proposal review process that describes the criteria and the process for reviewing campaigns. And then in a related area, we've updated the policy on integration of user-supplied equipment at LCLS, partly because the previous policy largely focused on SXR, which no longer exists. But anyway, if people that have any interest in that, please take a look at the updated policies.
We have one additional question here. To what level are you looking for the clear need for LCLS specifically, as opposed to other X-ray free electron laser facilities?
That's a balance, of course. To the extent that you can make this specific to LCLS, it will make it stronger. Certainly, it should be absolutely require XFEL capabilities in general. So that's a question of balance.
Yeah, thank you.
And then finally, the current campaign, the inaugural campaign in this area, is a bit unusual because here the objective is really science areas that will exploit millijoule pulses at 25 kilovolts, because this will be a unique LCLS capability, at least for the near future. Subject to all of the criteria that we described before, maximizing the scientific impact of LCLS in this area. And for this call, we've narrowed it a bit toward complex matter. Primarily complex condensed matter, and in this case, explicitly excluded biology, just so that we didn't have too broad range of applications to consider, but that does not mean that biology will be excluded from future campaigns. That's just, in this inaugural campaign, we wanted to keep it somewhat narrow until we see how things shake out. And then finally, as people think about areas for future science campaigns, there are many promising opportunities, and we will continue to seek input from the community through LCLS users. For example, at the user meeting, there will be discussions of this. We will continue to seek input from the SAC, from the broader science community through workshops, through any emerging national initiatives and the like. So people should feel free to come to us with your ideas and thoughts about areas that we ought to be targeting for future campaigns.
Okay, thank you. We have a number of questions here. So for campaigns, often they build on existing efforts of previous proposals. If accepted as a campaign, will there be restrictions on the efforts pursued at other facilities?
No, in fact, we encourage that. If there's a campaign that's a comprehensive research effort that requires beam time at a synchrotron or even at another FEL, we'd like people to sort of map that out and say, here's how we're going to make use of all of this and
Okay, so be
extract the
really
maximum impact
explicit.
from the LCLS time that's allocated, but
Okay.
here's how all the other pieces will fit into that.
How many runs will a campaign cover? We sort of mentioned that, but you said 4 to 5.
It's up to the proposers.
It's up
It's
to
what
the
it takes to
proposers.
address that science question. Sometimes it could be 2, 3, 4.
Okay, wonderful.
It should be driven by the science.
Okay, we'll pause here just for a moment in case other questions come in.
Meanwhile, load up
Yeah.
Tim, I guess. So.
I did that one. Yeah. When do you expect to announce the next science campaign? I guess
It'll be for Run 19, and the timeline for Run 19, looking around the table,
About 6 months from now.
about 6 months from now. Thanks.
Okay, so in 6 months.
Mhm.
All right, thank you. Again, you can continue to type your questions, but we will move on for an accelerator update from Tim Maxwell. Thank you.
Good morning. So I want to start off covering some of the conversation around the new undulator and transport systems, because our delivery for the new accelerator systems does look somewhat different. And then go into the details about some of the new SASE parameters associated with the new undulators and try to get through what we'll be carrying over from the original copper LINAC and the LCLS era into the new LCLS2 era. And so, as was mentioned, we'll be, over this course of this run, commissioning a new variable gap undulator system as part of the LCLS2 project. This is our 2 different undulator beamlines, one for soft X-ray delivery with horizontal polarization as before, and also for the hard X-ray delivery, a new vertically polarized undulator beamline. And so these variable gap undulators enable us to have more independent wavelength tunability for each of the beamlines, as well as potentially more significant tapering capability for studies on more intense X-ray pulse delivery. So we'll be running this over the course of next year with delivery from our classic 120 hertz copper normal conducting LINAC. So we'll be carrying forward a lot of the old capability. This delivery system is illustrated here. So there is this purple kicker or DC bend system that allows us to switch the 120 hertz pulse train between the 2 undulator beamlines. This can be programmed according to the program needs. So some maximum rate will be set to deliver from picked out of a 120 hertz pulse train to either hard or soft or both undulator systems. And in red here, you see there is a fast kicker abort system for each of the beamlines. That will be independently controllable by each of the, whatever users we have on the 2 beamlines. And that includes being able to do single pulse on-demand delivery. And then as mentioned, we do benefit from the variable gap undulators, and there'll be some independent wavelength tunability despite having the same LINAC driver, although we'll also be looking to sort of expand the independent tunability from shot to shot of the normal conducting LINACs. This is posted on our LCLS parameters table with the link at the top right. There is significantly more information further down that the PDF document there on some of the special modes. I wanted to highlight the extended wavelength tunability. This is basically from the end of the undulators and doesn't include the X-ray transport considerations, which I believe Mike and Sebastian will talk more about. So there is an extended photon energy reach for particularly the hard X-rays. The nominal pulse durations listed here are what are used for sort of estimating the expected yield of the undulators. Just pointed out that yes, we have a somewhat conservative estimate listed here for the pulse energy, particularly in the hard X-ray undulator. We do expect, as Sebastian will note, we expect to get considerably more as we get through the commissioning phases with the new undulator system. And again, noting the changes in polarization for the hard X-ray undulator. As was mentioned, we're particularly pushing into the copper LINAC versus the future LINAC. We have the benefit of much higher electron energy as well as higher compression that will enable certain unique capability for the copper LINAC, including this year, delivery of 25 keV photons. And sort of above that 11 to 13 keV range, we expect that to sort of, as we continue commissioning of the hard X-ray undulator system, to be fully capable sometime in the summer of 2020. Some of the special modes beyond basic SASE that we benefit from in the copper LINAC include the dual pulse or dual color modes that were previously available, at least for some of them. That includes our double slotted foil twin bunches, which is where we have 2 femtosecond spaced bunches with variable time and energy separation, or also the split undulator technique, which will particularly benefit from the variable gap undulators. We'll be able to increase the separation of the 2 colors in that mode by quite a bit more.
Sorry, we have a question. So I think on the previous slide, it was noticed that the pulse energies are a bit lower than previously stated. Why is that?
So as I mentioned, we're basing this on relatively conservative estimates of the undulator taper. Realistically, we expect, particularly in the hard X-ray case, to be able to exceed those numbers by a minimum factor of 2. Also, that is, there might be some more optimum performance in the middle of this range. These are just for the 2 extreme photon energies of the hard X-ray undulator system. So we do expect to be able to exceed that, but we're being relatively conservative with the initial estimate as we move into this new variable gap undulator regime.
Okay. Does that also hold true in a sense for the pulse duration? It's listed as 20 to 60 femtoseconds, but will pulse duration be less than 10 femtoseconds?
We'll get into
for the
that.
Soft X-ray.
We'll get into that as we
Okay.
continue in the
Thank
talk.
you.
The answer is yes.
So the answer is yes.
Okay, great.
So this is the nominal basic just varying of the electron beam compression, but we'll talk about
Okay.
shorter pulses going forward. So yeah, we will continue with some of the original copper LINAC techniques for femtosecond spaced 2-color pulses. Also, nanosecond spacing using multiple drive lasers for the LCLS copper LINAC will be something that we commission as we reestablish SASE in the undulator systems. This was the fixed period spacing, so any multiples of 350 picoseconds. This is something we also expect to recommission. It is
I'm sorry. We have a question about tuning, the time it takes to tune. So sometimes it can take about an hour to go from, say, 9 to 11 keV. Say you want to go from 11 to 25 keV. How long would you estimate you have to tune up to 25?
That is a good question. Varying it with, if we're using strictly the variable gap undulator system, this is new capability that we have to see. It should be relatively painless if all we do is vary the undulator gap, although that may come with an associated decrease in performance. With the copper LINAC, fully switching the electron beam energy probably will still maintain peak performance and will probably still be sort of a half-hour exercise.
Okay. Thank you.
For getting very short pulses, we had previously demonstrated on the copper LINAC the XLEAP system. So our first measurement of the sub-femtosecond pulses was recently published for the soft X-ray regime, and this was on the old undulator system, as well as in hard X-rays, a couple of different methods, including this very high compression mode for delivering sub-femtosecond hard X-ray pulses, also an extended range slotted foil. Going forward, the things that we will see returning are still the slotted foil. So again, to the question of sub 20 or 10 femtosecond pulses, the most straightforward approach of the slotted foil will still be available and is expected to just work. The nonlinear compression mode, that's pretty straightforward. The nonlinear compression mode also should function as before for the hard X-ray mode. We are looking at, for sub-femtosecond pulses in particular, the commissioning of a new system, XLEAP 2. This is a new installation on the new soft X-ray undulator beamline just upstream of it. This is to be commissioned and is a very high priority for this run. This is being offered to users as part of the scientific program. So this will be an at-risk experiment. This is a completely new system leveraging multiple, now for those familiar, will now be leveraging multiple undulators to use the coherent radiation of the beam produced by itself for more stable XLEAP delivery. So if you have questions, again, you can forward those to myself, Axel Ago Marinelli, or James Cryan. That's right. For self-seeding, that is a capability that we're still working on for enhanced spectral brightness and narrow line width. So for hard X-ray self-seeding, there was a mechanical redesign associated with the vertically polarized hard X-ray undulator. So the whole monochromator system for that is being rotated and adapted for the new polarization and for future high-rate beams. Likewise, for soft X-ray self-seeding, we've done a considerable redesign, including there's been some offline studies to work on the continued reduction of the spectral pedestal associated with soft X-ray self-seeding. Improved diagnostics and mechanical controls for faster, easier setup associated with soft X-ray self-seeding, and also some new optics that were designed to mitigate the future heat load for the new LCLS 2 accelerator. These are things that we are, again, pushing for installation and commissioning over the course of the run. It might be something that you could suggest your experiment might benefit from, but ideally experiments that would benefit from the seeding should still be achievable with or without seeding. So to wrap it up, the variable gap undulator systems, this is something we see as to provide new flexibility in energy and undulator tapering, new capability to run parallel hard and soft X-ray programs, as was alluded to by Mike. The SASE capability will be pushing into the higher photon energy range that we expect to see going into the summer of next year. Several of the special modes should return without issue once we have established the nominal SASE performance for the new undulator systems. And we are planning the commissioning of new and redesigned systems, including XLEAP 2 and hard and soft X-ray self-seeding. I do encourage people to take a look at the parameters table, in particular the attached PDF on that page, our frequently asked questions page, which is open to expansion. Maybe we can get some feedback today for things to add to that page. Thank you.
Thank you. We can pause here for questions. I want to encourage those of you listening to use the Q&A tab. It would be at the bottom of your screen. This way, the other participants can see your question. There's also the chat feature, but I'm not sure all the folks can see your questions. So please click the Q&A. If we don't have any questions at this moment, I think we're going to transition. Oh, we do. Thank you. Will Fresh Slice still be available?
Unfortunately, Fresh Slice will not be available for this run. The dechirper system is still installed on the hard X-ray beamline. We are looking in the future at a program for an upgraded dechirper system that would enable Fresh Slice on the soft X-ray beamline. So at least for this run, that is unfortunately a no. Okay. Not this year.
But you think run 19?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Outstanding.
We understand that as high demand, and we do have a project looking into that for future capability.
Okay. What portion of time is expected to be special operating mode?
Just driven by the user program.
Yeah.
I guess. Okay, so it's whatever.
Driven by demand.
Okay. Driven by demand. Thank you. All right, then next up we will have Mike Minetti, I believe.
Can I hear a comment? Sure. I'd say in the first half of the year, at least from the accelerator team's perspective, our top priority will be ensuring the full capability of the new undulator system. So that, at least from the accelerator perspective, that is our priority, at least in the first half of the year.
Indeed.
But then many of these things we expect to just turn on once nominal SASE is reestablished.
And so as the proposals come in and we do our scheduling, we'll be sensitive to that and put those that are more stretching or demanding on the performance side towards the middle or end of the run. So, but from a proposal submission point of view, propose the science that you think you need. Take awareness of the kind of restrictions that Tim was describing. Don't be fully dependent on seeding if at all possible. But we'll schedule as appropriate to maximize the chance of success for those that need these special modes. So,
Thank you. Okay, and Mike will give us an update on the soft X-ray instruments at this point. Thank you.
Hello out there. It's been a while, but we're pretty excited to get back into the saddle and deliver some great science. And just to reiterate with Mike, it's been a while, but don't be bashful. Let the good science drive your proposals, and let's not hold back. And so, first, I want to thank Peter Walter and Georgi Dukovsky and James Cryan and the whole host of team for TMO and Chemrix for providing this and really working hard to get this going. So very much at a high level, we're going to be putting two end stations instruments on offer. If you are familiar with TMO, if you're part of the instrument advisory panels, there are two positions. We're only focusing on what's called interaction point 1, and this is basically will be our LAMP end station. I'll get to the components of that in a bit. And then upstairs, we're offering a condensed phase chemistry liquid jet or a Chemrix end station for monochromatic spectroscopy and condensed phase chemistry. We'll get to that later. So those are the two general offers that we'll put on for run 18. All focused on running up to 120 hertz capability. There is no superconducting beam. I think we're probably very clear of that. So it's only up to 120 hertz. As Tim mentioned, there is a new tech that is able to share the beam between hard and soft X-ray undulators. But there is one slight caveat. With a given X-ray or electron beam energy, you must be very sensitive to the fact that maybe the longer or the shorter way, the lower photon energies may not be achieved while beam sharing occurs. And so this is something that we can
Scheduling issue.
Huh? Yeah, it's just a scheduling issue, but it's good. We just want to make sure of that. But as we bring on these new beam lines, these big shiny new beam lines, commissioning of TMO and Chemrix will happen earlier on too. So we're going to tension this with the user operations. So we're going to target this for April 2020 and bringing on an early science campaign led by Peter Walter and input for the user community in that phase to bridge that transition to a full PRP operation later in run 18. And we said we really want to focus on XLEAP. That should be available through the user proposals. And obviously, as a science focus and a campaign that Mike and Bob have mentioned, we really want to take advantage of this. And so you can kind of see just the general parameters up to here. Tim did mention that there's a little discrepancy of 200 versus I think he showed that the machine is capable of creating 200 EV photons, but our mirror capabilities and things like that are going down to that 270. And so just making sure, just to make you can see that. And these are kind of just the parameters that we want to have you guys consider for at TMO. And so I'm not going to belabor the XLEAP parameters because Tim and company have made that clear. And so as for the end station, in interaction point 1, it's our old standby and lamp, outfitted with the Timur Osipov high resolution double-sided VMI for coincidence. And this is moderate electron energy coincidence mapping, again at 120 hertz, up to 120 hertz. And optical laser parameters to be delivered, and I apologize, I don't have it in this slide here, are going to be initially at the longer wavelengths, so 800 plus signal and idler of an OPA, plus then harmonics being phased in of 800 later in the run.
Hey, Mike, we have a question. What is the largest possible energy separation for two-color mode?
Tim.
Yeah. Maybe.
Boy, that depends on which mode, which method we use. Some of the classic methods are still the typical like 1 to 2% range. Assuming we go with the new undulator capability would allow for significantly more than that, maybe 5-10%, contingent upon the installation of the seeding magnets, which we expect to be earlier in the year. But nominally 1 to 2% is still achievable with the two color modes. Future capability coming probably this run.
Yeah. So are we encouraging? Let's be more clear about that then.
With split undulators, can't they be much larger? As long as people are with some limitations on the pulse energy?
Yeah, you'll get restricted by pulse energy if they're very, very different, but probably easily do 5 or 10% with the new undulator systems.
I thought it was maybe more than that. So maybe if we can get some details in writing out in the FAQ.
Added to the FAQ.
Because I think that is, with these variable gap undulators, a new capability that is very important for this kind of science.
Okay.
That we need to make sure we're robust in the detail of what we can offer. So good question.
Yeah.
The question of the optics too.
And yeah, we'll get back to you with the detail of that, but it should go beyond the traditional percent or so, significantly. Let's get back to you.
Okay, then we'll update in the FAQ. Thank you.
Good, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Artem. Yep. So LAMP, as you typically would see this, and we'll definitely try to keep this in a robust configuration for sure, focusing on this charged particle coincident spectroscopy at that 120 hertz. Another end station on offer, really to focus on and really to take advantage of the XLEAP capabilities, was our demonstrated coaxial VMI spectrometer, kind of led by James Cryan and Ago Marinelli and the whole TMO crew. This utilizes the long ionizing laser source, propagates that and creates and streaks these electrons out. And so more of this, and so this will be definitely one of the workhorses for these XLEAP science campaigns, to be sure. But we encourage also, through that strong collaboration approach, potential other solutions that can couple to this too. So all the details on this you can find definitely linked to on our TMO page on the LCLS website, and these parameters then are also, you can kind of, I think, see the specifics for each of the end stations themselves are linked on their individual slides to give you what are those parameters on offer. Then Chemrix. The condensed phase chemistry, targeting sample solutions using the monochromatic soft X-ray pulses and a tunable optical laser. So this is obviously emphasizing soft X-ray spectroscopy on liquid samples, coupled with a variable line space portable spectrometer, as we've had in the soft X-ray department for several years now. Also, as well as absorption measurements and direct beam detection can be done in transmissive samples by a host of in-vacuum detectors looking at total fluorescence yield with APDs or MCPs. Given the complexity and still the limitation of the rep rate up to 120 hertz, we really do encourage the user community to focus on proposals that look at more absorption type measurements and emission type measurements. And unless a strong compelling case is made, given the difficulty of RIX measurements at 120 hertz for full RIX maps and in a time resolved fashion, we would like to try to reserve that and push that more to when we are enabled with a high repetition rate beam. And so probably take that in consideration and knowing those bounds with the parameters given here. Yeah.
So Mike, thank you. So there are a couple questions here regarding imaging. So when will imaging capabilities at low energies be available? And for soft X-ray imaging, it's performed at TMO. What?
Sure.
Oh.
So all kind of the same question.
Yeah.
So there was a good catch there. Said on the first slide there for TMO that we are no imaging capability thus far. We have a detector program searching into two different types of detector solutions for soft X-ray, large area imaging detectors. We are working with various people here at SLAC and various other places to try to deliver that. It won't be, I don't know if I have a necessary time frame, but I would direct them strongly to talk to either our detector department head, Mark McKelvey.
Right, let me answer this. So at the moment, we took the decision for TMO to not have an imaging capability and concentrate on charged particle spectroscopy of various flavors like Mike has described. Imaging will come along with the TXI instruments. So, with the detectors that are being developed for high rate operation. So it will be coupled, partly to the timeline of LCLS2 and partly to the timeline of TXI, which means it won't be for at least a couple of years. So for the foreseeable future, for the next couple of years, there will not be a soft X-ray imaging capability, unless there's some intervention by the user community to bring that capability, through other means. But we do not envision that as being a mainline capability for the foreseeable future until TXI comes online. I know that impacts a number of programs, but it was a balance of the capabilities we can offer and how do we get to high rate operation. So a good question, important question. It has to await TXI.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. So general capability is up here at Chemrix. In potential is a lot of the similar capability of that into TMO, but obviously monochromatic spectroscopy is that focus. And so in resolving powers of 2000 or so, on our VLS. And so here, taking that in consideration. And then at large, this is the last slide here. Basically, our detector suite. If you are familiar with CXI operations, this looks very similar to the serial sample chamber. So we're modifying something of that nature. And so here is the different types of detectors for our various XAS and total fluorescent yield measurements. Nominally, the variable line space grading spectrometer will be outfitted with an Andor camera capable of 120 hertz operation in full vertical bending mode that we've demonstrated in the past previous runs in SXR. So that will be a nice throughput. Again, 2,000 resolving power should be the target for your scientific samples. And then last but not least, it kind of got cut off there. Oh, no, it's right there. And then our plans are underway to increase the throughput, taking advantage of a different type of detector technology with horizontal acceptance on our VLS to get a factor of 5 throughput increase. And so that hopefully will be out later in Run 18.
Is it possible to propose time-resolved RIX experiments on solid samples for Run 18?
Let's see. We could talk to, Bob? Yeah.
I would say,
No.
in principle, yes. But keep in mind that instrument's coming on relatively late in Run 18. And part of Mike's comment on focusing on X-ray emission and absorption spectroscopy is that you'd really have to make the case that this is more than just a demonstration experiment. Because generally at 120 hertz, all right, there's a significant demonstration experiments that have already been done. You have to demonstrate something that goes significantly beyond that. And if you want to accommodate a solid sample, it will require some modifications to the standard configuration. So the bar is pretty high.
Okay. Ranges of depth available for liquid jet. That's another question.
So we can put on this FAQ the demonstrated thicknesses of our sheet jet technology that Jake Korlek and our sample environment group has offered, but it's on the nanometer scales, the length scales.
Okay. Thank you. And now we're going to transition to Sebastian Boutet to talk about the hard X-ray instruments. Thank you, Sebastian.
All right, thank you. Let's step right into it. So as a very quick reminder, we're talking about these 4 instruments here: XPP, XCS, MFX, and CXI. And for those of you who have been here before, as Mike said, they will look to first order the same as before. They are nominally unchanged except for a few, but very significant upgrades that I will be talking about. So I'll be focusing on what's different from the past. So we heard from Tim. We have about the accelerator expectations. The key point here is the same accelerator as before, has been said before, 120 hertz operation, the same accelerator. We can play the same tricks nominally with the electron beam, just passing it through a new undulator. So a new undulator with different gaps and a variable gap will produce radiation at different energy range, basically with the same modes as we could do before. So that will extend us to 25 keV in the fundamental, which means some of you might say, oh, that means I could go to 75 keV on the third harmonic. Yes, that will probably exist, but the mirrors themselves will cut off around 25, a little bit above for some beam lines, significantly below for others. The exception here is the CXI mirrors. The focusing mirrors do cut off at their hold energy of 11 keV, and at CXI, 11 keV will be the limit when using focusing mirrors. CXI has the ability to use Beryllium lenses to go all the way to 25 keV, so that's still possible, but not with the focusing mirrors. You can see here the expected performance. As Tim said, this is a conservative estimate. We certainly hope that we will do significantly better during the run. We expect to be able to do this at the beginning, and so we are promising, or sort of stating this is the minimum expected that we think we'll be able to safely reach. As also previously mentioned, the new undulator has got a vertical polarization, so that's a significant change from before. The primary consequences of that are higher throughput for monochromatic experiments as well as horizontal scattering experiments. So for beam sharing, the throughput will be higher. For spin and delay experiments at XCS, the throughput will be higher, as well as for wide angle scattering and with the big detector mover at XCS.
I'm sorry, on your previous slide, it looked like 9 kV was at 1.5 millijoules, while experience in the user community is that you can get 4 millijoules, say, in run 17.
Right.
what-
So about 20 minutes ago, Tim said he thinks we can do a factor of 2 better, which will bring us to just about what we were able to do. Again, this is a conservative estimate. We certainly are pretty confident to do significantly better.
Okay, thank you.
So the new undulator will present new challenges beyond the advantages I just stated. We'll present new challenges in spectroscopy measurements. If a geometry was in the horizontal plane before, now considerations need to be put into rotating that geometry to vertical.
Just to reiterate, I think we covered this question, but how quickly do you expect to go between 9 and 25 keV? I think notionally you said 30 minutes, you know, the traditional change in energy timeframe.
It would be the traditional, for an energy change that large, I would expect it with the copper Linac to be a full Linac energy change. So sort of the usual half-hour time scale.
Okay, and certainly in between shifts, folks can request energy changes of 9 to 25, some range, right?
Right.
Okay.
But then within a more limited energy range, you know, the tunable variable gap undulators will allow it, you know, on a much faster timescale. I mean, TBD in detail, but about a minute.
Energy scanning of the new undulator systems is something for very quick changes that will actually be in development this year. But
Right. So the simpler energy change, right? The undulator gap is something that will that needs to be evaluated, and don't expect to have a direct impact right away. The tuning methods will be similar to before. But with the new variable gap, as Tim mentioned before, and as was discussed, we have the ability, after commissioning, of course, to have very wide energy separation for 2-color experiments compared to before. All right, so most of our significant upgrades to our nominally unchanged instruments are in the detector area. So for XPP, XCS, and MFX, our 3 in-air, primarily in-air instruments, we expect that the CS pad era is coming to an end. We do not expect to use the CS pad again. They will be replaced with EPIX 10K detectors that have a better noise performance than CS pad and a factor of 10 higher dynamic range achieved via automatic gain switching. The picture on the right for the big detector, if you guys have seen the CS pad before, it looks exactly the same. It won't look different. It's going to perform very different. So you can see the performance on the left there. Slightly smaller array will go from 2.3 to 2.1 megapixels compared to CS pad. It's just the chip design that's a tiny bit different. So we expect these to be used broadly at those 3 instruments. At MFX, I'm still mentioning this as a new capability because we got it at the very end of last year, but we did operate in Run 17. We have this new rayonics detector for protein crystallography that's got a very high photon count capability and is much faster than what we had before. And this is available exclusively at MFX. This thing is enormous and it will not move from MFX. For CXI, that's the one potential exception to the statement I made earlier about the end of the CS pad era. We are deploying a Jungfrau 4M that's got very similar performance to an EPIX 10K, except it's a 4 megapixel array, and this is specifically for vacuum applications in this case. So again, 10,000 photons per pixel at 120 hertz, achieve via auto switching between gains. This will be available only at CXI. This is being built as we speak, and we need to commission it. So we have still the CS pad as a fallback plan if something goes wrong in this particular case.
Apparently there's an old rayonics. Besides your new rayonics, is the old rayonics still available?
Yeah, good question. The old rayonics is half the size, and we expect to still make it available at XPP and XCS. Yeah, okay. It's only for in-air applications, so if there's a true need for it, it is here, and we will consider the request.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so in combination with replacing the CS pad within the detector chamber picture that you see on the bottom left, with the Jungfrau, we are also adding, just behind that detector, a a grating to do Talbot interferometry, to do wavefront sensing integrated directly into the vacuum system, specifically for nanofocus experiments at CXI. This has been a lacking capability for us to measure on the fly and align and characterize the nanofocus. This will be deployed directly into the system, and we will not have to measure the focus, tear everything apart, rebuild the experiment. So it'll be integrated in it. Similar wavefront sensors developed by Matt Seberg here, I could read the paper, are also available to be deployed on an experiment basis in air at the other hutches. But CXI was much more complicated due to the vacuum integration, and this will be available for Run 18. All right, for those of you who have had the pleasure of using our closet-sized labs, this will be a refreshing news here. We have been building a big new building here at SLAC, and the Arriaga Science Center biolabs will be, they are open. They will be available for users, and users are going to be encouraged to go utilize that space. It's going to be much better than what we've had in the past. So you can see pictures of the nice new lab space here. There will be an open house during the users meeting on Wednesday, September 25th. Great thanks to Chris Kupitz for putting all this lab together over here. It's about a 5,500 square foot lab space, biosafety level 1 and 2. It's got a cold room, dark rooms, a wet glove box, crystallization lab. So a very, very well equipped lab, major upgrade to our previous capabilities.
Before you go on, there were some more questions about detectors. So what is the quantum efficiency and sensitivity of all those detectors at higher photon energies, meaning above 10 keV?
Good question. So those detectors are all with 500 micron thick sensors. So they will have a quantum efficiency fall off above 18 keV. Okay. That's what we nominally have available at this point. The EPIX and the Jungfrau will both have reduced performance once you get close to 20 keV.
Close to 20. Okay. Are 0.5 megapixel detectors available for X-ray emission spectroscopy at CXI and or MFX?
Yeah, so I didn't mention this because it's not a new capability, but we have the EPIX 100 version of the EPIX detector family. Those are only measuring up to 100 photons per pixel. They are ideal for spectroscopy, low count type experiments. So those are still available. No problem there.
Okay, great. And
the old Jungfraus for in our application are also available. We have some Jungfrau for in our application at 0.5 megapixel and a 1 megapixel. They are still available. Okay.
And can we get more than one detector? Could you have two detectors for different Q ranges if you wanted?
The answer is yes. If the proposal and the science case justify the need, then the answer is yes. This will all be considered as a possibility.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. That's it.
All right. So last few slides are about standard configuration. We are emphasizing even more than in the past standard configurations for this run. We expect to operate in standard configuration even more. And standard configurations for this run means hard X-rays as well as MEC, because the soft X-ray new instruments do not have standard configurations yet. So please go through this website carefully and look at the standard configurations and see if they apply to your particular science case, because we expect to award more beam time to standard config than we have in the past. So I'll briefly run through those. The standard configurations we have are the same as we had for Run 17, and I've highlighted in color what is new and what is new about them. So first, for time resolve pump probe diffraction at XPP, same as before, with in this case replacing the the CS pad with the EPIX 10K detector. We will provide for standard config 2 Zane's capability, time resolve Zane's capability with a scanning monochromator. And in this case, we were using an EPIX 100 detector for this, so it's not different from the past configuration. In terms of XCS, we will be providing time-resolved liquid jet scattering as combined with spectroscopy. And I did not highlight that because I forgot, but we are rotating this configuration to vertical to allow for the spectroscopy measurement to be along the polarization direction to minimize background. So that's a new capability there. And we are again replacing the CS pad with the new EPIX 10K detector. And then we're also offering a time-resolved scattering for geometry for thin films. And sorry, on the right, I put it on the wrong side. Sorry, I did say new polarization direction. That should be for configuration 1. My mistake there. And then the detector will again be the upgrade to the EPIX detector. All right, at MFX, the 2 same configurations exist. So one, a fixed target goniometer configuration, and the second one, liquid jet with time resolve capabilities and the nanosecond pump laser timescale. For the goniometer capability, this is a new goniometer developed in collaboration with SSRL that will now be capable of scanning up to 120 hertz using the Rayonics detector. And for liquid jet configuration in atmosphere or helium, we will have the capability to now use the EPIX detector, which is really great for crystallography compared to the CSPAD. And finally, at CXI, the same liquid jet and vacuum configuration as you guys will be familiar with the expectation that we will be replacing the CSPAD with the Jungfrau 4M. I say here that could still be the CSPAD if we run into issues. And depending on what happens in that regard, that will influence whether we can run PCS in parasitic mode or in dedicated mode at CXI. If we only have the CSPAD available, then that will adjust our plans for PCS. And I should mention here that we plan to release a call for PCS proposals, protein crystal screening, in the next week or so, with an expected submission deadline of October 1st. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. I think we're going to go ahead and transition over to Gillis Dyer, MEC department head, to give us an update on the MEC instrument. Again, as we update the slides here, I encourage you guys to type your questions in. Okay, here's one for CXI. What about 100 nanometer focus?
Okay, so that goes back to, so that's nominally the same as before. What was available before is still the same, except that we now have this online wavefront sensor capability that will make these experiments presumably a lot better. So that's our hope, at least. So, but otherwise the capabilities are as before.
Okay.
Again, with the mirrors, in this case, cutting off at 11 kV because of the mirror angles.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Then let's hand it over to Gillis. Go for it.
Okay, thanks. Hello, MEC fans. Hopefully you were listening during the accelerator talk and Sebastian's talk, because the hard X-rays that come to MEC are the same. In particular, when 25 keV is going to be available, it will come to MEC when it becomes available to the rest of LCLS. Also, Sebastian talked about EPIX 10K detectors, which is the type of detector that we're going to transition to for our quads. So I'll start.
And actually, on that, your EPIX 10Ks will be the thicker silicon. So
I will
say a word on
yes.
that. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So just starting with the lasers, which are not fundamentally very different, but I just want to go over the long pulse laser output is 4 times 15 joules to put into 2 beams of 30 joules each in the green, and we are improving how we deliver our pulse shaping. Still, users should submit their desired pulse shapes well in advance of their experiment, but we can give from 5 to 35 nanoseconds, square, ramp, step, and so forth in our pulses. And then in focusing the target delivery of the long pulse laser, typically we use phase plates. We're acquiring additional continuous phase plates because these work quite well. They deliver good energy into the spot. So we had a 150 micron phase plate, and we're getting 300 and 600 for this run. And we have demonstrated since and during the last run that using our higher energies since the 2017 upgrade and focusing with 150 micron phase plate, that we can well exceed 3 megabar in the pressures, the shock pressures that we can achieve in targets. The standard configuration for XRD and XRTS is the same as it was in run 17, which was a change from previously. We have this normal X-ray to target orientation, and we have the 20 degrees on either side of the X-rays for the laser coming in focusing. You can see in this picture sort of the setup of the area detectors, which shows the angles coming off of the X-rays that are accepted. So this is the standard XRD. We're gonna by default not put a Thomson scattering in this because that is commonly not asked for. The X-ray Thompson scattering forward and backward configuration takes out 2 of the area detectors and diffraction in order to put in the forward and backward XRTS. And just a note on diffraction analysis, we're going to be using Dioptus as our standard, and that's going to be available for running on PSANA machines. And maybe answer this question, or is this a question for me?
Yeah, this is actually a question going back to Sebastian. So for your beam lines focusing at higher photon energies with the beryllium lenses, so can we add more of those beryllium CRLs to achieve a smaller spot?
The CRLs that we have on the beam lines, they're in a fixed location, so that will define the spot size for those. We commonly, when needed and justified, we can add an XYZ stage with lenses closer to produce a small spot. You have to put the lenses closer to get a small spot. So that can be done to try to push towards nanofocuses at the other instruments than CXI by just adding a stack of lenses closer. It is doable, yes.
Okay, yeah, so that was.
Thank you.
Good. All right. So back to these are the long pulse standard configurations, and I'll switch over. Look at the short pulse now. Short pulse is still a 25 terawatt 1 joule short pulse laser. You can see we have had a lot of developments that before Run 17 that are being enhanced or that are being made more reliable and over the break. The pulse contrast as a feature of our laser now, where we are showing 10 to the 8 at 3 picoseconds and 10 to the 10 by 30 picoseconds with this new pulse cleaner that we're using. We have still the frequency doubling crystal available to go to 400 nanometers if you really want to clean up that pulse. And we have a 130 picosecond uncompressed mode that we can also deliver the laser in.
Will there be an opportunity to increase the low angle scattering, say 10 to 20 degrees or about 1 to 1.5 inverse angstroms?
Is this just a question of the available to do increase the low angle scattering?
So in other words, I think it has to do with the location of the detector. Is there flexibility in location of the detector to capture those low angles?
There can be. You should talk to the instrument scientist, but it's not the standard configuration. Is the only
it's not in standard config.
Right.
Okay. I think the issue for perhaps liquid diffraction is that at 25 keV, this might be very important. So.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go into it in more detail in the fact then.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so with the short pulse focusing, we've got down pretty well. This is a focal spot uncorrected. We have a wavefront sensor DFM being integrated with EPICS, and we're acquiring a vacuum wavefront sensor too for the best correction of the focus. Synchronization time tool is the same. Can measure down to 10 femtoseconds. 100 femtoseconds RMS is the standard jitter, and this is just an image of ions from commissioning shots this year. And okay, go ahead.
Sorry, there's another question. So the user community is aware that the polarization is going to change. So will the CS pad locations in your standard config take that into account?
They will not be moved. So they are in the position that they currently are. Yep.
Okay, that's published on that.
Yes.
Users can check out.
Right. It is basically going to be this picture.
Okay.
Which is online on our website. But thank you for that question.
Thanks.
That's interesting. So when it comes to the short pulse laser, we're requesting, it's not required, but this would help us if you can do your experiment in our standard beam delivery when possible. This is online as well. It just shows this isn't a standard configuration because it doesn't dictate diagnostics, but it shows where we could put diagnostics for short pulse experiments.
There's another question about EMP. That's been a problem in the past.
Yes.
So are these EPICS detectors less susceptible to EMP?
So we are applying some design criteria to make them less susceptible to EMP, but we don't have those detectors yet. they're being built and they'll be available mid-run. We believe that that we've found some ways to make them more robust, and we can talk about it more in detail. But this is just the fourth item on my table here. I guess I don't actually mention the EMP robustness that we've that we're working on, but we have found some things that we think can help against EMP dropouts. So these are just the diagnostics we're building or modifying. One of the big ones is setting up a new X-ray imaging system for doing phase contrast imaging, direct imaging, and dark field imaging. So we should have that for the run. Talk to the scientists about that. Talk to us about it, with including static phase correction. So for getting nice submicron focuses, we're altering some of our spectrometers to reach the 24 keV. And installing an X-ray pulse energy meter. And as I mentioned, the quads, they are being replaced with an EPIX 10K format. And in our case, we're moving to 1 millimeter thick instead of 0.5 millimeter thick silicon, just to get a little bit more efficiency up towards above the 20 keV range. So that's all I have. Take any other questions?
All right, thanks. As we change the slides for our final speaker, we'll see if there are any more questions that come in. So just to be super clear, on the FAQ, you will be very explicit about the standard config options in considering 25 keV for the lower angles. I get the impression that the users really want to see.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can discuss offline and make sure that it's very clear in the FAQ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. And now our final talk of the day will be Alan Fry giving us a laser operations update. So go ahead, Alan.
All right, sure thing. Yeah, thanks for saving the best for last, and thanks to all of you attendees who stayed online till the very end. You are the true heroes of the LCLS user community. So just looking here at laser sources available in each hutch in Run 18, here's a little table. I'm not going to go through it in any great detail. You already heard from Mike Minetti about the laser capabilities that we'll be providing in TMO and in Chemrix. Again, there's some time phasing for both of those. So for more details, please have a look on the website. In the hard X-ray hutches there, XPP, XCS, MFX, and CXI, we're pretty much same as before, although stay tuned for some news about MFX on the last slide here. Our standard Ti-Sapphire offerings are again very much the same, around 20 millijoules, 800 nanometers, and we can do the harmonics of those, and then IR and visible OPAs are just what they sound like. HFPC is our capability for generating sub 10 femtosecond laser pulses. And you heard all about the MEC laser capabilities in Phyllis's talk just a minute ago. So in order to accommodate the reconfiguration of the instruments in the near hall, we've shifted things around a bit in the laser space. Some of you are familiar with it. Over there, we've actually expanded a little bit in order to accommodate some new complex laser systems that we're preparing for the high rep rate operation of the superconducting accelerator when it comes online in 21. So we'll still be centrally located in one laser room and delivering the laser beams to each of the new instruments and to XPP. And we're also setting up a dedicated timing lab. And again, you'll probably hear more about that in the future. Not a lot to talk about as regards to Run 18. So looking inside the laser room here, we are reconfiguring it as a clean room environment. So it'll be clean room protocols there, and we're putting together 4 spaces for laser systems. Some that will be installed in Run 18, and others that will be forthcoming when they're fully developed and tested and commissioned there. The 4 separate laser bays will actually be able to deliver beams to any part of any instrument, so that we'll have good redundancy and the capability to send a different beam for a different configuration, or for in the case where we have a laser go down and we need a backup system.
Alan,
yes.
can you go back one slide?
Yes.
Quickly about or maybe 2.
Sure.
about the capabilities. Yes,
Yes.
here, one thing that I didn't help and add this to your slides is a capability that we are going to help deliver to the CXI Hutch towards Run 18 is to deliver short pulse UV capabilities. Working with Pulse and DOE, we're developing for the broader user community to use. And so that is on the order of for both 200 nanometers and 267 nanometers, not tunable, but set wavelengths. To get achievable in one phase of 50 sub 50 femtoseconds. And then we have funding to try to go extend that towards sub 30 femtoseconds in more of a tunable regime. And that's phasing for more like later in Run 18. But that is also on offer to CXI.
Okay, terrific. Thanks for making that note. I appreciate it. All right, so back here in the near hall, again, our ability to deliver beams through from each of these laser tables to all the different hunches is going to be enabled by a beam switch yard that will sit on the floor beneath our feet, essentially, inside the laser room. And this is a fairly complex beast, but it will give us a lot of flexibility and redundancy capabilities to be able to deliver both the lasers we have now and the ones that we're developing for the future. So what are those lasers? Initially, we'll start out with a couple of the Ti-Sapphire systems that we all know and love. These are 120 hertz systems that again operate at up to about 20 millijoules, and these will be the lasers that we'll deliver for all experiments enabled by the copper LINAC, the 120 hertz. And these will only initially be synchronized with the copper LINAC. In the future, you'll hear more about this in future meetings. We'll be delivering our OPCPA laser systems. These are the high rep rate lasers that will initially produce about 35 watts of average power. Again, that'll be at 800 nanometers. The pulses will be a little bit shorter at 20 femtoseconds. And we'll have some rep rate flexibility as well to be able to match the LINAC, 30, 90, and or nearly 100 and a megahertz all at constant power. So in the future, then we'll be able to go to higher power and offer different wavelengths. So that's all coming soon.
Alan,
yes.
there's a quick question. I think folks just want to make sure that the slides that we're all sharing today will be available on the web. And I think that's answer to Paul, yes. So yes, they will be. Thank you. Okay.
Sure.
Thanks, Ann.
Okay. Well, that's all right. That brings me to my last slide, which is what is coming soon. We've redeployed one of the lasers from the near hall into MFX, and we built a nice little enclosure in there. So that's a system that we'll be commissioning during Run 18. We're not anticipating fielding that for user experiments in Run 18, but certainly like to get feedback on the popularity of that device for MFX experiments. And as I mentioned to you already, we are developing the high rep rate OPCPA laser system. So for you real laser fans out there, we've got optics letters, a couple of optics letters actually published on the work that we've done on the R&D system. And we're also working on improved timing and synchronization for the whole facility. That's again a topic for beyond Run 18. During Run 18, we'll be using the same timing and synchronization system that we had before with some updated phase cavities, but we're anticipating pretty much the same performance in jitter and drift that we've all come to know and love over the last 10 years or so. And that's what I've got.
Great. Thank you, Alan. All right, so we are at the stage now in our town hall where we are open to all questions. We've allocated some time here, and the staff have been kind enough to hang around and field any questions that the community has. So please feel free at this time to type in your questions into the Q&A. You can also type it into the chat. And we will just wait to have your questions. So any changes in the data saving policies? So same XTC files are stored for 10 years. Does that still hold true?
Yeah, that still is our policy. Please publish before that if you can.
Just on that note, in terms of data strategy, I know that Yana and Amadeo will have a workshop at the users meeting for looking forward for higher rep rate data strategies. So please stay tuned and look forward to that.
Actually, that's a very important point. Can I add further to that? The transition to LCLS 2 and the much higher data rate and need for online analysis capabilities, takes a lot of preparation. So Yana Thayer's team is working through various workflows for different experimental types. She needs to hear from you, everybody out there. What are the workflows you need to see in terms of both immediate data capture, reduction of data to a manageable level, so we remove unwanted noise and so forth, and then online analysis capabilities. These things tend to take years to develop, 1, 2, 3, 4 years to develop. So get hold of Yana and her team now if you want to see your favorite workflow implemented for LCLS 2. And go to that workshop at the LCLS users meeting. Very good point, Ariane.
Yeah, and you can also reach out to me as I'm trying to coordinate with the UEC the different workflow options that look the most promising. So my email is also available on the UEC site. Okay, moving on. For campaign
can we do the laser one first? Sorry.
You want to do the laser one first?
Yeah,
go for it.
because I've got to
read
go.
the question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it's a question regarding lasers, general plans for standard diagnostics, spot size, pulse duration on target. So it's a good question. We're limited in some cases by the vacuum environment of the target chambers in terms of being able to have in target chamber measurements of such laser parameters. So what if it's of great importance, what we would do is set up an equivalent target plane if we have the space around the chamber to do so, including having a surrogate vacuum window, for example, if pulse duration is of great consideration, so that we get the same dispersion there. So in some cases, we do have in vacuum or at target, if it's an in-air experiment, we can do measurements directly on target. So in your proposal writing, it's really useful for if such requirements are needed to make sure that that's very specific and called out if you need direct.
And get hold of your team, Alan.
Absolutely.
As you write the proposal to make sure it's optimized for what you can deliver.
Great addition. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does that also hold true for MEC?
Well, yeah, so Gillis went over that a little bit.
Okay.
So we have, for example, right now an in-air wavefront detector, but we're procuring an in-vacuum wavefront detector so that we be able to get a little bit more direct measurements. Yeah.
Thank you. Great. So we've got some more questions here. This is for Bob and Mike. So for campaign proposals that envision a combination of UED and XFEL capability, will the needs be evaluated concurrently and assign time in a coordinated fashion?
We will certainly try to do so.
Okay.
I mean, UED is clearly a single beamline device, so it's constrained in which end stations it can offer at any given point in time. You'll see Run 2, the call for Run 2 coming out
Yesterday,
okay, coming out already. That's
hall.
focused on gas phase chemistry, for example. So as long as it's correlated with what's available at UED, we'll do our best to reserve the time for a campaign if it's so needed.
that's right. Having spoke to CJ Wong, and if these compelling cases for campaign proposals and it progresses to, he is very much willing to look into providing those capabilities earlier on as those configurations, as Mike said, those configurations are quite limited and they are unique, and so they take some time to change out. And so that he is very much open and willing to try to incorporate this, not only just in the latter part of Run 1, which might be a little more difficult, but earlier stages in Run 2 and potentially beyond. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good question.
If I can just maybe briefly add to that, in addition to these logistical issues, people should try to clearly articulate how the UEC measurements complement what they're proposing for LCLS.
The UED.
Or the UED, I'm sorry, UED measurements complement what they're proposing for LCLS, and why one and the other are, or the other are both required.
Good point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. So how will samples transported from the new biolabs to the LCLS experimental halls, how will that be orchestrated? Are small labs in the far hall available, or what are you guys going to do?
Sebastian.
Well, we intend to have a government vehicle available to do this transport. So with a reserved short-term parking space to allow this to happen. That's our plan.
So alongside that, there will still be the labs available in the car hall as previously, both the wet lab and the upstairs.
Yeah, those labs are still there. So, for work that you do every 5 minutes for 30 seconds, you probably don't want to come back over here. So the nearby labs will still be available for the near-term work that really has to be done.
Similarly in the near hall, the relatively new lab in the near hall is still available. So
In the far hall.
In the far hall,
and
yeah.
in the far hall.
So far and near, we're all available.
So that hasn't changed. We've just added this 5,000 or so square feet of
Great.
offline space. So
Great, thank you. For Bob, the LCLS campaign proposal, if it didn't make it into the campaign aspect, does that mean one visit, so say 4 or 5 shifts, will be awarded with a reduced scope without a new proposal submission?
yeah,
I think
So-
the answer is yes. It will
Yeah,
be
the answer is
considered.
yes, for the
Right.
full proposal. If
Yeah.
the LOI was declined, then you need to submit and prepare a new PRP proposal. But if you're submitting a full campaign proposal and it gets denied, a subset of that will be considered by the PRP for a single run, for a single beam time in run
Yeah.
18.
and let me chat. So you'll see in the template for the full campaign proposals, within that template, there's a section that says what specifically will you do in run 18. So it'll be that part of the proposal that will be carried over to the normal PRP consideration. So make sure that's very clear for those of you who are submitting campaign proposals. You articulate what you would do in run 18.
Thank you. I think we'll give the user community just a little bit more time for
Sure.
final questions, and then we'll wrap up.
I did want to, I think, or Ariana did mention it kind of briefly there, and Mike said, we do have a run to proposal call out for the UED instrument. That went out yesterday. Those proposals are due on October 10th. And we will have a similar kind of town hall meeting, what we're doing here for UED and what is on offer in that gas phase configuration on September 11th. So we'll send more information out to that community hence.
Good.
Quick statement regarding the biolabs, just
Yep.
any questions should be addressed to Mark Hunter and Chris Kupitz, that they're going to provide much better information regarding the biolabs than I will. So they're the guys to talk to.
Right. And just another shout out that there will be a tour of the biolabs during the user meeting on the Wednesday afternoon.
Right.
So you can sign up to participate in that tour. Please check out the LCLS user meeting website.
Right. Along those lines, please everybody sign up for the LCLS SSRL
Yes.
user meeting. So, it's an important time for us coming into this whole new run. A lot of new capabilities, and a look ahead both to the high rate LCLS 2 beam. Early thoughts on specific configurations for HE. Campaign discussions, UED. There's a lot for us to talk with you about. Many areas where we need your input. So please do sign up and come along, not just for the biolab tour, which will be excellent, I'm sure, but for those general discussions. So,
And
It's
if you're
running
MEC, please also sign up for the HPL workshop, which is at the end of that same week.
running concurrently, right? So
If I can add
maximize
maybe
the fun.
one more plug to that. So Mike Meditti outlined the new instruments that are soft texture instruments that are coming online for Run 18. And he mentioned the early science plans that are being formulated. There will be further discussion of that at the user meeting.
yeah,
So
very
people
good
that are
point.
interested in participating in these early science periods for TMO, Interaction Point 1, and for Chemrix, we encourage you to come to the user meeting or contact Peter Walter and or Georgi Dukovsky.
Yes, this will be the very earliest access after technical commissioning, which will be done jointly with the internal beamline scientists, prior to opening up to PRP access. It's a really important time. There's constraints there, but there's great opportunity. So that discussion should be a very rich discussion, I think. So, very good.
Thanks for recognizing that, Bob.
All right. Are there any final questions from the user community that's still tuned in? Give it another minute. All right, well, I think we will conclude our town hall. Just a comment that the questions asked that have been posted, we will have a frequently asked questions and FAQ document posted to the LCLS website. Recorded version of this outstanding town hall will be available. We'll send details for that from the LCLS user's office. And with that, I want to thank you guys again for your time this morning. And we will conclude. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ariana.
Thanks, Ariane.
Thanks.